opening remarks. And then we have the panel that comes in, and then we have 10 or 11 people from the entire panoply of animation, visual effects, games, comics, AR and VR that will be bringing their contributions and thoughts to the next steps. This entire program is going to form a report that will be prepared overnight in order to feed that back to the ministries concerned in order for the operational agenda and the execution to take the next steps. With these words, may I please invite Mr. Apurva Chandra, the Secretary of Information and Broadcasting, to please give his opening remarks and his speech to this forum. Please, sir, thank you very much.
Good morning to all the participants for this breakout session on the AVGC sector with the focus on education and skilling. As we are all aware that the Honorable Finance Minister announced in our budget speech the creation of a AVGC task force. We would think that this is a momentous announcement in the budget speech because this recognizes the importance of the AVGC sector and the role it can play in creating employment, taking the media and entertainment sector to the forefront internationally, like the role which was played by the IT industry in the 90s and 2000s, so that role can be played by the AVGC sector by providing avenues to the manpower, skilled manpower of the country in this particular field to become the backbone in the media and entertainment for the purpose of AVGC. The Honorable Prime Minister, as we have all heard in the plenary, also laid great emphasis on the AVGC sector. He said that the AVGC sector can provide immense employment opportunities to our youth who can serve the global market, and the Indian talent can show the way for how can lead the way in this particular sector. So now it is our responsibility to provide them the adequate skills for our youth and to enable them to become the factory in the AVGC sector, the factory of the world, this talent pool we need to harness. So today, in that context, we have a collection of the entire setup of the AVGC sector, the domains of the AVGC sector in the country, and we look forward to your views and ideas on how to take this sector forward. We'll constitute the task force on the basis of the discussion today. We'll finalize the terms of reference after listening to the various suggestions which we received today. And also on the education and skilling, today we have my co-chair, the additional secretary for the Department of Skill Education, Mr. Atul Tiwari, who has also experience of working in the ministry. Can you please shut off your mic? Can everybody be muted, please?
Can we have everyone muted? Mr. Kiswani, can we have you muted here?
So, the development of the AVGC sector is a cross-sectoral effort. It is not this that the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting alone can achieve anything. And that is why we thought that it would be most appropriate to have this breakout session as a part of the education and skilling sector. Because the development of AVGC, apart from the media and entertainment industry, it lies at the cutting edge, the cross-section of education, skills, as well as the natural talent which a person has, his own creativity and his talent, which is sort of innate towards the animation sector. And that is what we have to nurture, and we have to develop. The AVGC sector in the country over the past 7 years has seen tremendous growth. And when we look at the growth, when just around 2 months back, the Big Picture Summit was held by CII, where it was projected that the media entertainment sector would go up to $70 billion of annual revenues by the year 2030, seeing an annual growth rate of 10 to 12%. Within this sector, the EVGC sector is going to grow even at a faster rate, which may be 14 to 16%. And during my visits to Mumbai, I have seen I met with a lot of talented people. I have seen a lot of enthusiasm in the AVGC sector. And I have no doubt that this is a sector which is going to grow. And we have to provide the proper guidance. Once we do that, then it is bound to grow and take over the world. In one particular company which I visited in Mumbai, a small startup with just 2 or 3 people who were professional gamers. What I saw that they developed a simple game just for soap cutting, another game for painting of nails, and those games, they had been downloaded 60 million times and 80 million times across the world. Very popular in Europe and America. So this is the kind of creativity which we are looking at, that just 2-3 people, they have made a company out of nothing and had a valuation of almost more than 200 crores. So this is the kind of opportunity in this particular sector provides for those having skill. Even though you may not be having formal education, you may not be having a degree from an engineering college, but if you have the talent and you have the creativity, then this particular sector will provide the opportunity. And that is what we need to provide to our youth. The studios which I visited, animation and visual effects, it is so apparent that whether it is the advertising sector, whether it is the movies, whether it is the OTT, any product has almost 30 to 40% of animation and visual effects, and that they form the backbone. This is only going to grow over the years. So that is a huge opportunity. Today we are catering largely to our country. There are companies which have started working for the international markets, and many of the international films have also been processed here. And this can grow exponentially over the period. Gaming in the world is one of the fastest growing sectors. Apart from the aspects of gaming per se, whether it is betting or game of skill, game of chance, but the content creation itself, it requires very high-end skills, a very high-end creativity, and that is a sector which we want to focus through this AVGC sector through the task force. So today we have a large panel of experts. Mr. Biron Ghosh is the moderator, and Mr. Ashish Kulkarni and others who are participants who will be speaking, giving their views. And we look forward to all your suggestions, and we hope that this will be a very productive, fruitful session so that we can take forward we can make our country at the front take it to the front of the AVGC sector. The National Center for Excellence for AVGC, which has been pending for some time, I have had a number of discussions with the industry on this, and we would like to set up the AVGC industry.
That last time, Meenakshi, you've received the revised ATM sheet. Are we good over there?
Everyone, please go on mute.
She's not on call, but I'll just pass the message.
Okay.
with the industry as a major participant. So, because we have to service the industry, and this Center for Excellence, I believe, can set the standards for education and skilling throughout the country, rather than just providing skilling education in a limited way. So, because today also AVGC education is being provided by a number of universities and colleges independently, but there are no standards per se. So that can be the larger view, larger objective of this AVGC Center for Excellence, to set up standards for what is to be done in the education and skilling field. So with that, I conclude my opening remarks, and I look forward to a very fruitful session and suggestions from the entire industry on which we can act and create the task force and take the vision of the Honorable Prime Minister forward for the country. Thank you. Now I would like to invite Mr. Atul Tiwari, my co-chair, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, sir. आदरणीय सूचना प्रसारण सचिव महोदय, आदरणीय श्री वीरेंद्र घोष जी, आशीष कुलकर्णी जी, मंजर सौरभ जी, कीर्तन यादव जी और गणमान्य वक्तागण और एवीजी सेक्टर के all the leading lights, which I have a big list of the from education, gaming, comics, VFX, animation, AR, VR, XR, and new technologies. And some of the names which I can't even pronounce, those kind of technologies are also there. Sir, the most significant part of today's Honorable Prime Minister's discussion was, उन्होंने बड़ा अच्छा कहा कि हमें तत्व ज्ञान नहीं चाहिए, पर हमें ये चर्चा करनी चाहिए कि बजट के मुद्दों को हम कैसे सरलता से और अच्छे से धरती पर लेकर आए, और सरकार और इंडस्ट्री कैसे मिलकर सबके प्रयास से एवीजी सेक्टर में हम अपनी नई संभावनाएं को का सृजन करें। दूसरी इंसाइट उन्होंने बड़ी अच्छी दी, प्राइम मिनिस्टर के आदरणीय प्रधानमंत्री ने खुद ही उन्होंने कहा है कि आजकल का जमाना डायनेमिक स्किलिंग का है, जबकि जॉब रोल्स काफी चेंज हो रहे हैं और ट्रेंड मैन पावर की काफी आवश्यकता है। और एवीजीसी टास्क फोर्स में, जैसा सचिव महोदय ने कहा, उससे एवीजीसी सेक्टर में हमें क्या करना चाहिए, उसमें एक नई दिशा, नई गति मिलेगी। और चूंकि मैं पहले आईएनबी में काम कर चुका हूं और एवीजी सेक्टर के महानुभावों के साथ मैंने काफी चर्चा भी की है, तो जैसा सचिव महोदय कर रहे थे कि वहां पर सेंटर ऑफ एक्सीलेंस बनाने की बात चल रही है, टास्क फोर्स बताने की बात चल रही है, उससे बहुत ही इस सेक्टर में लाभ होगा। मैं अपनी बात को स्किलिंग पे लिमिट करते हुए यह कहना चाहूंगा कि पहली बार ऐसा लग रहा है कि जैसे एवीजी सेक्टर जो अंडर द रडार फॉर मेनी इयर्स था, आज अपनी प्रतिभा और पोटेंशियल के चलते वो रडार से बाहर निकलकर बजट में उसने प्रवेश किया है। और हम चाहे अर्स्ट एंड यंग और अब बाकी कितने भी तरह के डेटा को अगर हम देखें तो हमें लगेगा कि ये एक सेक्टर जो है काफी बहुत जल्दी ग्रोथ करने वाला एक सेक्टर है, जिसमें काफी इंटेलेक्चुअल कैपिटल की भी जरूरत है, शिक्षा की भी जरूरत है। और जिस तरह से इंडिया एक बैक हाउस फॉर द कंटेंट क्रिएशन बना हुआ है, अगर हम इंडिपेंडेंट आईपी बनाने लगे और ताकि इस इंडस्ट्री को अगर हम अपनी तरफ से सरकार और इंडस्ट्री मिलकर अगर काम करें तो ये काफी ऊंचे लेवल पे ले जाने की संभावनाएं बनी हुई हैं। स्किलिंग के बारे में मैं कहूँ तो जैसा मुझे बताया गया कि लगभग अभी 1 लाख स्किल्ड हैं, बट स्किल भी काफी नियोजित तरीके से नहीं है, अनस्ट्रक्चर्ड है, और लगभग 2.5 लाख स्किल्ड रिसोर्सेज की जरूरत है। तो मुझे लगता है कि जिस तरह के अभी हालात है, हम स्किलिंग मीडिया एंड सेक्टर स्किल काउंसिल के साथ मिलकर हम क्या कर सकते हैं उसके बारे में संक्षिप्त विवरण देना चाहूंगा, और आशा करता हूं कि आज डिस्कशन के दौरान बहुत ही प्रैक्टिकल हमें सजेशन मिले ताकि हम स्किलिंग को एवीजी सेक्टर के साथ जोड़ सकें। तो मैं आप सब सज्जनों को ये बताना चाहूंगा कि स्किलिंग इंडिया के बारे में हमारे माननीय मंत्री जी, राज्य मंत्री जी और हम सब लोग मिलकर एक नया आयाम देने का प्रयास कर रहे हैं, जिसमें प्रधानमंत्री कौशल विकास योजना को भी एक नया रूप देना है, जिसमें सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट पार्ट है कि कैसे हम फी बेस्ड भी बनाएं, फ्री एजुकेशन भी बनाएं और कैसे सारी चीजों को इंटीग्रेट कर सकें। प्रधानमंत्री कौशल विकास योजना के अलावा हमारे पास ITIs हैं, जिसमें हम लॉन्ग टर्म ट्रेनिंग देते हैं, शॉर्ट टर्म ट्रेनिंग के लिए हमारे बड़े अच्छे प्रधानमंत्री कौशल केंद्र सेंटर बने हुए हैं। हमारे पास सेक्टर स्किल काउंसिल का एक बड़ा सेटअप है जिसमें मीडिया सेक्टर स्किल काउंसिल भी है। साथ ही साथ अप्रेंटिसशिप में भी एवीजी सेक्टर में लोगों को देने के लिए काफी अपॉर्चुनिटीज हैं। हमारे पास इंडिया इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ स्किल्स हमने बॉम्बे में स्थापना की है टाटा वालों के साथ, अहमदाबाद में है, कानपुर में है। हमारे पास काफी जगह बनी हुई है जहां पर हम सेंटर ऑफ एक्सलेंस भी अगर एवीजी सेक्टर आए तो हम अपने संकल्प और एक हमारी स्ट्राइव जो प्रोजेक्ट है उसके साथ मिलकर ये भी हम सेंटर इस एरिया में हम स्टैब्लिश कर सकते हैं। जहां तक मुझे लगता है कि हमें जो ध्यान देना पड़ेगा कि कैसे एग्जिस्टिंग इंस्टीट्यूशंस, स्किलिंग इंस्टीट्यूशंस, एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूशन के साथ हम काम कर सकें। हमारी एनसीवीटी हमारी एक रेगुलेटर है जो इस तरह के जॉब रोल्स बनाती है। जैसा सम्मानित प्रधानमंत्री जी ने कहा कि जॉब रोल्स काफी चेंज हो रहे हैं, मुझे एक लिस्ट दी गई है जॉब रोल्स के बारे में, तो आप सब सज्जनों को उसके बारे में बताना तो जैसे सूरज को दिया दिखाने के मुताबिक, इसलिए मैं उस पर नहीं जाऊंगा। मैं सिर्फ ये आश्वासन देना चाहूंगा कि जैसे आपको अगर लगता है कि कोई स्किलिंग की आपको जरूरत है, उसको एक क्रमबद्ध तरीके से एनएसक्यू के मुताबिक करने की जरूरत है। हम हमेशा आपके साथ तैयार हैं। जहां ट्रेनिंग और ट्रेनर्स की जरूरत है वहां पे हम पूरी तरह से आपकी सहायता करने के लिए तैयार हैं। हम चाहेंगे आपकी जो संस्थाएं हैं ज्यादा से ज्यादा लेवल पर शिफ्ट करें, जिससे ऑन द जॉब ट्रेनिंग भी छात्रों को और जो स्मार्ट जो स्टूडेंट यंग यूथ है उनको भी मिले। अगर आपको लगता है कोई स्किलिंग की और आइडेंटिफिकेशन करने की जरूरत है वो भी हम करने के लिए तैयार हैं। जैसे मैंने कहा लोकल आईपी क्रिएशन तो ये हमारे मंत्रालय की बात नहीं है, बट उसके संदर्भ में अगर सेंटर ऑफ एक्सलेंस बनाना हो या इंटरनेशनल टेक्नोलॉजी इंटर्नशिप की बात करनी हो या स्किल लोन की बात करनी हो, इस सारे बारे में हम सहायता देने के लिए बिल्कुल आगे आना चाहेंगे। और मुझे लगता है कि अगर हम इंडस्ट्री और सरकार की तरफ से अगर हम साथ मिलकर काम करें तो हमें लीप फ्रॉग करते हुए एवीजी सेक्टर में इंडिया की एक बहुत बड़ी पहचान बनाने में हमें काफी सहायता मिलेगी। अपूर चंद्र सर, धन्यवाद मुझे इस मौके में बोलने के लिए, आपने मुझे अवसर दिया और मैं आप सब सज्जनों की बात सुनूंगा और सजेशन उसको इम्प्लीमेंट करने का मंत्रालय को से सारा प्रयास करूंगा। धन्यवाद। जय हिंद।
Thank you very much to both the chair and the co-chair for showing us, raising the curtain on, I think, what can be the way to amplify India's potential in a sector that both the chair and the co-chair have recognized is a sector whose time has come. Mr. Chandra and the whole team at MIB and Mr. Atul Tiwari and your words just show us that I think we have now a government partnership that is providing equal thought leadership, is open, is authentic, means business, is inclusive. Just by the people on this call, you can see how the consultation is taking place. And so you have been listening. The fact that you early in your term, Mr. Chandra, went down and met with people in the industry, and the anecdotes that you gave us about games and the other people that you met is a very welcome sign. Mr. Atul Tiwari, of course, has the advantage of having been in the MIB and now is in the Ministry of Skills. And potentially when we come up with our big plans, hopefully he will go to the Ministry of Finance, and then we'll have a complete circle to make sure that this industry gets what it needs. I'd like to just make a couple of comments, and most of my comments will come in the closing because I want the panelists to be, talking with you. But I think what we are out to do today is, number one, to figure out how do we make the budget announcement an economic reality. I think the Prime Minister referred to this as optimal outcomes, and I think that's very appropriate as the charter for today. We're not going to talk about the several accomplishments that have happened over time and what each of the wonderful panelists has done, but I think focus on the priority for what can we do in 2022 in terms of being a key employment generator. And our topic has been very aptly and narrowly put down as how do we strengthen industry skill linkage. I think if we just focus on that and make a few points here, we will capture that in the essence of this report. I'd like to also say that we have a representation, first of all, from services and also from the IP creators. The representation, first of all, from services and also from the IP creators. And our industry comprises of a few different strokes. So in the animation side and the game side and AR, VR, we can create both services as well as products. Whereas many of our many of the sectors, as we say, for example, visual effects, is actually a wind in the sails of all of these different verticals. So we have a very healthy composition of both products that are end products as well as those that influence the creation of end products. I also want to take away the myth because we have sat in many councils like the Services Export Promotion Council, etc., about the fact that the services sector in India is really back-end work. I think this is a very outdated term because to make a frame of film in most of the people's industries out here on this call, you have 12 or 13 or 14 different processes. And in the past, if you go back 5 or 10 or 15 years, you would see some very simple basic processes used to come into India and the rest used to be done across the world. But there are many people, not all of whom are on this call. I can see Jesh on the screen and Merzin and Praful and Mike and many others have actually taken this now where end-to-end work is done there. The largest platform in the world for visual effects was Super Bowl Sunday yesterday, where some 30 odd films were made, out of which 17 were made in India. So even if you're doing visual effects, which is pure services, like we did for, when Meta was launched by Zuckerberg, it may not be known to people on this call, but it was done entirely in Bangalore for the 45 minutes of the metaverse. So I think that we should look at both driving the initiative of global growth, which is, I think, the mandate for today, as well as how do we incubate, accelerate, and grow, the local themes that are so vibrant and are so important. And I'd also like to mention that when we talk about AR, VR and our industry, and the skills can talk to that, and there are many people on this call who can talk to that, we are working with imagery and with simulation. So no matter which of these industries we talk about, those skills are transportable into designing, whether it's aircraft or cars or whatever else. I think, these are the skills that actually now are transporting themselves outside of the entertainment industry as well, and we'll hear something on that. So with that, I will actually like to kick off this go around the table, so to say, starting with my three panelists, and then opening it up to a number of people from the webinar here. I'll call upon Ashish, a long-time campaigner. We've been on the AVGC trail before it was called AVGC. And Ashish, your comments, please. I'm going to request everyone to be between 4 and 6 minutes if possible, and come back again when questions are posed, and I'll be getting those questions on my feed here. So Ashish, I'll go to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Biren. Thanks a lot, Apurva Chandra sir and Atul sir and Sanjay Murthy sir from the education. In fact, the stars were never aligned so well for AVGC XR sector like they are aligned today, because most of the time we have to actually go and educate the secretaries and the ministers. But this time around, whether it is Sanjay Murthy sir in the higher education, whether it's Atul Kumar sir in skills, or Apurva Chandra sir, who has actually been championing our sector very strongly when he was in Maharashtra, where we did the Maharashtra policy as well. So to say that this is the real right time, and even the support from Nirja ma'am and many others from the finance ministry. The key things that I would like to put forth is like, the 2 decades have put India into a position where we've kind of grown on our own, and the education and skilling was historically a part of, on-the-job learning. And very few, only 2 institutes, FTII and NID, were there, and then we had a structured development that happened. So one of the key things that we need to remember when we actually look from the industry perspective and our learnings in this industry is that we have 106 years of cinema history and a storytelling that happens out of India. We make the largest number of films. We make content in the largest number of languages. And that's why most of the dimensions, the Indians have a natural flair of storytelling and understanding the needs of multiple languages. So we need to really see that we, doctor our educational content and skilling, gaps in multiple languages, where it becomes easier for people to come into this space and actually express through the visual communication patterns that are evolving across the globe, may it be metaverse or XR or anything. But the basic skill remains, which is the creative skill and the performing arts skill and the design skill. And the thinking that goes behind this is something that the industry understood over a period of time. And in the absence that the education and the skilling was not formally available, we need to see how that structure can be created for the next 10 years. We looked at a dipstick study in FICCI and submitted a report a couple of years ago, where we know that we are 1% of the global industry today. And if we have to get it to about 5 to 6%, what would it mean in terms of skilling? And presently with 1.85 lakh direct employees and maybe 2 times bigger than indirect employees that we have engaged into AVGC XR sector today in this country. And we did a study state-wise, studio-wise. Now we realized that by 2030, we need to be at least 20 to 25 lakh people who would be direct employees. And when I say this direct employees, it is very critical that we need to look at grooming them at a very early age, because our experience is that the kids who actually study creativity or performing arts or design, or they practice it at the school at a very early age, at 7, 8, and you've seen bigger stars like the singers, the dancers, the storytellers, or even the cricket players. They started very early in their life, and I think that's where we need to concentrate. So while we can actually really look at the universities and the skilling centers and all, but intervention we need to do right now. As we form the task force, I think the whole, the government of India right now has kept a focus on AVGC as a task force to be formed to do it. Puts a lot of pressure on the industry to perform better and show it that, the examples are given for IT. But when the examples are given for IT, the IITs existed before IT came in. The engineering colleges were too many. But the creative education and the design education and performing arts education is not formalized. It's not been, it's been the part of the extracurricular activities. And that's the core ingredient of our sector. The technology is an enabler, and technology can be learned any point in time in life. And what we need to do is the basic foundation. And we realized while we were working for the last 2 decades in this country, that most of the creative skills actually came extremely strongly from the rural India and their point of view and their way of learning. And what Arena and MAC and all these institutions have done by reaching out to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, destinations has further enhanced the inspiration of these kids. And one of the deep stick study that we did 2 years ago also told us that the inspiration of a rural kid in India to make a career is same as an urban kid. So there is absolutely no difference because they are exposed to the same, same media information today and the media ecosystem. And that's why their inspirations are same. And that's why we need, as an industry and government together, need to reach out and form these clusters in multiple states. And we realize that forming an AVGC policy in the states, forming a local association there helped a lot in bringing that whole thing up. At the same time, the skilling that happened as a phenomenon from 2012 and the skill ministry that was formed in 2015, it was a boon into the whole space because with education, one can actually be literate into a subject. But with skilling, you can add to your livelihood. You can actually look at a right balance of education and skilling to give the best output from the world to the world. And that's when we look at the global standards, the national education policy that is actually allowing merging of multidisciplinary education. It's a big opportunity at this point in time for our industry to integrate creativity, performing arts, design, sports into these ecosystem and make sure that we actually work closely with the primary, secondary, higher secondary, and the higher education with universities. And luckily, with the large amount of private universities and government universities taking keen interest, right now we have formed curriculums in 47 universities, which actually add to all the aspect of the value chain. And with Media and Entertainment Skill Council, we are also designing media and entertainment creative aptitude test, which would actually set a benchmark and would define what is required to make a career in this space. And it will go well with the parents and the kids at the same time. Two more quick aspects of our industry is that the most of the learning came from the masters, how a master can become a choreographer or a cinematographer. If you work as an assistant, you learn the most. And that's why the Guru Shishya Parampara needs to be imbibed in our education system as far as our field is concerned. And of course, it goes same with the design and sports as well. So performing arts and creative arts requires a Guru Shishya kind of relationship. You learn the best when you actually are watching the master or working with the master, whether you're creating comic book or creating XR or whatever. At the same time, our industry, the nature of our industry is such that everybody is an entrepreneur by nature. Whether you are a writer or a director or a producer or an actor or cinematographer or a modeler, or a compositor, you all come together as a unit to create a film or a television show or OT show or ad films. And then you disperse and you actually form another team and you go on another project. So this is a very unique feature, and that's why we require multiple clusters to be formed in India. And the education also made available in these clusters in the same way. And with the COVID, it has actually shown us that the farthest smallest towns like Sagar in Madhya Pradesh, Bilaspur in Chhattisgarh, Cuttack in Orissa, and Guwahati and Tinsukia, we had small studios in Nainital and Solan in Himachal delivering our shows, and they're continuing to deliver. They went there because of COVID, but now they have a comfort level that they are delivering these shows. We need to also reach out to them to help them increase their strength there and look at this phenomenon of skilling with Guru Shishya Parampara and also building entrepreneurship at the same time, because they need to be relevant for the next show that they need to do, and they work on project to project basis, which is a very unique feature of our industry. At the same time, what we need to do with the the National Center of Excellence is to create the right benchmark to look at the global standards in production and in education both. And as a task force that would be formed right now, the focus on getting, the growth of our manpower, which is at par with the global standards, is going to be extremely critical in every single vertical. Gaming in particular and AR VR still needs a lot of insights, because we are still to find the right kind of curriculums and the right kind of faculty development programs for this. And the comics, I believe, is at the core of every storytelling, because it starts with that story that transforms from observation to mind to eyes to hand, which creates a story board which is like a comic, which can be a first part of the storytelling in the audiovisual format. So I think once the foundations have been made stronger in these areas and the concentration is good with these areas, rest of the specializations will be picked up on the interest level of the student. And I always believed that the faculty is the most important, because the interest of a student in a subject is as good as the faculty is. And I think that's where our faculty development and allowing our directors and our creators on the field and the shop floor to go and educate people and to purposefully tell them that you will have to spend 2 weeks in a year educating different people in different locations is what industry must do to make sure that they get the best output. And, I think I will actually go by the inspiration of every kid in this country to make a career in AVGC, because there is industry has done it well. with the support of the government. And today we have the right stars and the right noise that's been created. And we will definitely not let the government down. With the task force, we would definitely see India is a superstar in the next decade in this sector, because everybody in this industry is very committed. But the education and skilling gap needs to be reduced, and we all will work together to make this happen. And these are the significant points that we see, not to underestimate our rural creativity. And we need to design an inclusive program. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ashish. Thank you. As we can see, this was a great, passionate start, Ashish, as always. Thank you so much. I would really like for everyone to have a chance to speak in the time available. So please restrict yourself. If you don't mind, I'll come in after about 4, 5, or 6 minutes so we can get the rotation. But I think that was a very passionate, as always, and very, very pointed remarks, which I'm sure many of the others will pick up on and amplify and also adapt to their relevant sectors. So thanks for that. I'll come to Munjal Shroff, again, a long-time campaigner on the road from Graffiti Multimedia, has worked, in the animation space, including with my former guru Ram Mohan sir, and of course a very, very key part of his studio from the early days. So he's very active, across industry forum and in education with MESC, etc. So Munjal, may I ask you to make your points as pointedly as possible, as always. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks, Ben. Let me start by thanking all the three ministries and all the three secretaries, Apurva ji, Atul ji, and Sanjay ji, for facilitating this dialogue. I think with the AVGC task force being formed, and this webinar is hopefully a first step, and a series of such steps would continue to keep the dialogue going. So let me straight dive in to some of my kind of points that I have. I think the key factor here is that I think India's credentials today in terms of delivering whether animated shows or VFX or gaming, is clearly established. I don't think that there's any doubt. There are numerous companies which have over the last 10, 15 years have done phenomenal job on all the A-list games, or feature films, I think that there is no doubt about. The question is that what is our vision? How does this industry move into a higher orbit? And I think that can only happen where we have Indian creators, Indian leads, creative leads, at the forefront leading some of these projects, which means that we need to have showrunners, creators, executive producers, directors, game designers, lead visual design and VFX, not just working on shows in India or games from India, but basically working on global IP. That I think is the first step. Second is that having then worked on some of these top bracket shows or movies or content, I think the next level or the next step in our evolution is the fact that we create global IPs. We create, content which is meant for a mass consumption. And I think that is going to be a massive step for the industry, not just the industry, but also for our economy, because moment an IP is created from India and it is parked in India, the kind of revenue potential and the export potential that it will generate will be massive, and that will do wonders. I mean, in a way, very similar to what our IT industry did, when they started out, we started at the lower rung and obviously moved up to now. Today, our IT companies are creating products. And I think that's what we need to look at doing. I think a couple of key factors here for this to happen. And I think one of the biggest is that, while Ashish touched upon, how we need to bring in education, and setting at the very start, from a very early stage, right? So I think most of our education today is still, I would say, geared more towards STEM. And I think we need to ensure that it also needs to get an impetus from the creative side, which is ensuring that our kids today are also in a place to take up creative professions as well. And skilling is a great way. I think let them explore their skills, hopefully promote some of the skilling competitions, like things like World Skill is a great platform, right? So can we have an India Skills platform where we can, measure such talent, give them the recognition and fame that they would really boost their confidence. right from the school at the college level as well. So by the time they're ready to pick a career, there's already a proven track record. Like we have math Olympiads. I think it's time that we have created Olympiads, where we can basically give a platform for kids, to basically seek out, explore, and express their talent. I think one of the things is that right from an early age, it's very important for a child to be able to express his talent. And I think more opportunities need to be created for our kids to express themselves. I think that kind of urge to be a storyteller, needs to start at a very young age. That skill of telling a story needs to be honed from an early age. Doesn't matter eventually whether that the child grows up to be a game designer or a movie director or an animation film director. I think let him pick and decide his course. But I think we need to make that framework and that ecosystem available. The other crucial factor is also about upskilling talent. And I think this needs to happen on a continuous basis. There's a concept basically which is called as the continuing education units, which has been adopted in a lot of skilling ecosystems across the world. I've been part of designing some of this for companies in Canada, and even in the US. So I think the important factor is at every stage, the learning never stops, upskilling should never stop, and I think we are in a profession which is so dynamic that every 6 months there is a new software, there's a new technology coming up. And I think that's what makes our industry so dynamic and so exciting. So I think we need to create a platform where essentially our, people who are even today practicing in the craft today, how can they move into a higher orbit? And I think that is definitely something that we need to focus on. And I think there's a structured framework that needs to be created. And one of the things that I'm suggesting is that we create a Gyan Kosh, a knowledge bank, wherein the top practicing professionals, donate maybe 50 hours a year, and make that themselves available, at least 50 hours to start with every year. And then the educational institutions can tap into this pool and avail of that talent to come and talk to students, on various topics. Right? I think ours is a profession where, people need to learn from the masters. I mean, I've had the very, very good fortune of being groomed by Mohan, who's the father of Indian animation, and I think it's been one of the biggest blessings in my career. And I feel that it's only time that people who've been in the industry for 15, 20 years, it's to pay it forward. And I think Gyan Kosh can become a great way or a platform. I think it's important to build these kind of platforms and mechanisms so that basically there's a structured approach. I think there are lots of people today my contemporaries, my peers, who want to do this, but they just don't know how. So I think it's our job, and I would definitely suggest that the AVGC task force that is now being set up should definitely take this on, that how we can do this. So it's a very vital aspect as well. The third thing that I'm going to talk about is that, we have a lot of good, creative institutions, educational institutions coming up across the country, right? But the challenge is that the kid today who's sitting in a village in Orissa doesn't know that, hey, there is an NID in Ahmedabad, there is a Srishti, there is some of the best, design institutions which exist across India, right? What I'm proposing is that we should have a common entrance test or a joint entrance examination for the creative industries, so that there is a platform that is available. It helps educational institutions to also understand, and find the right talent. So there is a common benchmark against which students are measured, evaluated, right? And some of these talent, what happens that when we see these exams and when we see the grading and the rankings, we know what the top talent is. And that talent, should therefore be given every possible resource within the system to groom them. And I think setting up something like this will go a long way. I mean, at MESC, we've started this in a small way. This is something that we had worked upon, and as MeCAT is the first baby step in that direction. But I think we need to work more on how we can make this, accessible across the entire country. So maybe one test or every 6 months there's a test like that happens. So basically students are graded, which also means that educational institutions would need to adopt and train people for a standard, which is a national occupational standard, something that MESC has already defined in a lot of our verticals. Right? So it's about aligning our curriculums, to these occupational standards, and I think that is again bringing about a structure. When the industry is managed to today scale to about maybe 1 lakh or 2 lakh professionals, and we are dreaming, and aspiring to have 20 lakh workforce available to us, in the next decade or so, I think we really need to really up the game and see how we can do this in an interesting manner. Also, I think another aspect here is that allocating funds to bring in experts, right? Bring in experts who've been top professionals, internationally, showrunners today, writers, I think writing is a very, very major skill today that I think, particularly writing for animation, writing for games, I think that's a talent that we lack, I think we're doing great in terms of producing content for India, but I think we still have a long way to go when we are trying to write content, produce content for the international market. So that's definitely something that we need to work towards. And I think that's where idea is to tie up with potentially the right universities, right bodies across the world to bring in the right kind of talent to, basically pass on their knowledge, to our talent pool in India. And I think one other opportunity also that might come along the way as we start building up this ecosystem of skilling is that there could be an opportunity as well for India to potentially offer its services and expertise to some of the other countries, whether it's the Middle East, whether it's some of the other Asian partners that we have, and that could also lead to very interesting business opportunities as well. How we can help some of the countries who are a little behind the curve compared to India. And I think that would be a great opportunity as well for us. So I think these are just my quick notes, on the kind of things that we should be working on. And I believe that the AVGC task force, it's great that it's been announced, and I think already, it already has its task cut out. A lot of work on the policy has already happened. At FICCI, we've helped formulate the national AVGC XR policy that we proposed. And obviously we will all continue to work towards, ensuring the task force is a success and it serves the needs of the industry. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Manjal. Thank you, Manjal, for those very well made points. How do we lead the world by being in the world rather than just being, looking at our market and looking at what we can do here? And I think that will happen through a cross flow of how we can get people to be part of a global ecosystem. Thanks for that. I also think that the skills platform is something we'll pick up on, in successive conversations. I'd like to come to Ketan. Ketan Yadav is the COO and the VFX producer for Red Chilies, which requires no introduction. Has worked on some of the largest movies that were the forerunner for many other large visual effects films that have come out since then. But Ketan, over to you for your thoughts. I will request you to please restrict them to 4 to 5 minutes, or I might have to just come in there because we do have 11 other speakers after you, and then closing remarks and questions are beginning to come in. So, yeah, thank you. Over to you, Ketan.
Thank you, Apurvaji. Thank you, Atulji. I heard my colleagues Ashish and Munjal speak, and I think most of the points they have already covered. So I don't have much to say. So that will help us a lot in terms of time. I would just want to make some short comments on what I feel is that I believe, and I truly believe, that the golden age of our sector has arrived. And with the government focus on our sector and what we do today, what foundations we lay today, what pipeline processes we implement today will set the course for the next decade, which will decide whether India becomes a global player in the entire animation, visual effects, comics, gaming, and comics, all the sectors. So I think it's a great time to set up the task force it's great that something like this is coming up, where the key players, the role models, the achievers of our industry sits together, has a say, and actually designs and plans what the younger generation forward is going to learn and train upon. So that's what my first thought is. On that, in our sector just doesn't, the training, the foundations, the education which we will impart in our sector necessary will not only be applied to our sector, because the uses, the foundation of training of our sector, whether it's AVGC or automobile designs or space and research designs or architectural walkthroughs or product designs, the foundations of those training implies to all the other fields. So it is very wrong to say that whatever training we impart here or what we are going to teach them, the students, the future youths, they're going to have a lot more options, just not the AVGC sector, to go and impart their own experience and training what they receive. The new evolving sectors like AR, VR, virtual production, motion control, motion capture, simulcam, new ways of movie making, new ways of storytelling. The training is going to go and help them achieve those things as well. And since as I've always said, our sector is a beautiful amalgamation of technology and art. Okay, and we do not need big degrees to enter our industry. We basically need those basic training of computer and passion for art, which basically gives you the output which we have all achieved. So I think that's what is the key, that our penetration into the semi-urban rural areas, okay, which is going to be very rapid and very fast. Once we have the right type of training, I would emphasize on something which is called the practical, dynamic, demand-based training, okay, which will take the new way of teaching, which is the new education policy, you call it, or whatever it is. We should change the way we impart training so that we can make industry-ready, say interns or youths. And I'm sure with OTT platforms, the film industry is going to be very rapid and very fast. Once we have the right type of training, I would emphasize something which is called dynamic, demand-based training, which will take
Ketan, we could hear your voice literally and figuratively playing back, I think, on the webinar. So thank you for those points. Thank you. I'd like to just say that we have the three panelists have opened the conversation, and we are now going to look around to go into sector by sector. I'll go into education and then games and so on. So let me just start off with education, since that is the topic of the day. And may I please call upon Anil Pant from Aptech, who has probably the widest reach in the country in terms of the number of locations, and can bring insights from the several students that they teach every year and graduate every year, to talk about the way in which the jobs of the future are being groomed by his institutions and institutions like him.
Thank you very much, Biren. Thanks for the opportunity. And I must say that it was a very pleasant experience to hear no less than the Prime Minister talking about the importance of the AVGC sector and the connect that industry and education can combine to grow this business. Biren, I'm just going to start with two things. One, we've been in this space for the last 35 years as Aptech. About 7 million students we've trained over the last 35 years and placed them in their first jobs. I actually want to share something with the Ministry of Information Broadcasting, Skill Development and Education. Sirs, today, when a child looks for a career, animation, VFX, gaming or comics is probably the 30th or 40th in their list of preferences after all the things. You know, people still say engineer banega, doctor banega, lawyer banega, banker banega. Somewhere in the, lower down in the list of priorities is this. Now, we waxed eloquent about the IT industry's growth and the fact that animation, VFX, gaming and comics can be probably as large as IT in the next 10 years. There was a seminal event that happened in the IT industry for this growth to actually occur. And that was actually Y2K, which actually opened the eyes of people that there were great career opportunities available in the IT space. And you saw a mushrooming of IT courses. People started hiring in a very big way. Offshoring started happening into India with value addition. And having been a part of the IT industry for almost about 30 years, I know what impact Y2K had on that. Unfortunately, in our AVGC industry, there's no such seminal event. It's just been the incredible growth that the industry has experienced. It's organizations like Biren's, which started maybe about 5-6 years back with double-digit numbers and today are in thousands and probably looking at growing into tens of thousands over the next 10 years. It is the passion of guys like Ashish. And when Ashish, thank you for talking about what Arena and MAC have done in rural areas, but I want to actually bring that in as a point of, it's just been, Nasik is one of the largest centers that Arena has, and they have 800 students at any given point of time. And the honorable secretaries would be surprised that there are about 30,000 students who get placed every year. But gentlemen, the fact is that as we speak, there are 100,000 jobs available. And how do we get people to understand that you can actually create massive and brilliant careers in the space of AVGC? That is the problem that the education space has. No one company, including ours, can ever reach what the government can do in terms of popularizing the possibility of growth for children in this space. Placing them, getting them jobs is not a challenge at all, sirs. They can, I mean, today, if, we can do 30,000, I'm sure 100, 150,000, 250,000 jobs is not a problem in the country. Now, Biren, this is all that I need to communicate from an education space. There is a lot of content available. There is a lot of standardization of courses. Industry Connect, at least with our 800 centers that we have in the country, is at an all-time high for us. People like you give us time. We get the best of the best from industry to come and talk to people. That is not a challenge. The challenge is in terms of ensuring that enough people in the country know about the prospects that lie for them in the AVGC space. Biren, that's my 2 bits worth. Thank you very much. I hope I've kept it as short as possible.
Thank you very much, Anil. I think what you are talking about is that if we as a country need to scale this business, then we need to make sure, in addition to all the other panelists have said about the many things that need to be done, but building that legitimacy of the future of jobs in AVGC is something you are requesting that we can put into the agenda for what the AVGC task force needs to do, and who better to do it than the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting that have the reach to every nook and cranny of the country. So thank you very much for those very great points.
Very true. Thank you.
Move now. I'd like to move from a large-scale creator of talent to a boutique that became one of these centers that we all look up to, Whistling Woods in Mumbai. And I'm going to bring in, the very eloquent Chaitanya Chitrikar to give us his perspective of how what he does in Whistling Woods can become 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 Whistling Woods in the country. So over to you, Chaitanya. Thank you.
Thanks, Biren. And, it's not possible to do what we have done without support of people like you and Ashish and Munjal and everybody. In fact, he helped us kickstart our entire animation program and blending it along with Phil because, So I have 2 or 3 specific things to talk about. One is that the MIB as well as the Ministry of Education needs to understand our industry. So our industry, has a very flat hierarchical structure between the ideator and the worker, right? It's just 4 levels. So you have ideators, creative managers, managers, and executors. So even at the bottom of the pyramid, even the executors need to come in with an appropriate blend of art, craft, technology, and commerce understanding. So it cannot be unidimensional. They have to have all these 3 areas covered, right? And because of that, all education structure in media and entertainment needs to cover all these 3 areas at all levels, right? Now you may have the percentage variance different at different levels of the pyramid, but it needs to cover all. That's the first bit. The second bit is we are by far extremely dynamic and diverse. So we have multiple platforms. So you have cinema, television, OTT, digital, as well as VR. And you have all these other learning tools. So you have general education, you have specialized, you have foundation, you have theory, you have practical. So you need to blend all these in while covering these 4 content creation and consumption platforms. All of them are unique, by the way. Cinema, television, OTT, and VR. And you need to build a curriculum matrix in that. The third thing is that our educational institutions need to have defined goals. And the goals should be employment, entrepreneurship, and research. These are every single student or every single cohort of students has to be trained and educated to achieve these 3. And the tools we have at our disposal are education, academically. There's training, which is a significant amount of doing and applied. And the third is to enable ideation. So as long as we are using these 3 tools, education, training, enabling, ideation, to create the goals of employment, entrepreneurship, and research, it forms a nice 9-grid matrix, and every minute of the curriculum of every program has to focus on one of these 9 grids in order to achieve all of them in the given time, right? We don't have 8 years, 9 years of education. You only have a fixed time. So this is as far as the creative and technical aspects goes. Now, the Honorable PM spoke about how we need to have specific on-ground applicable asks for deployment of funds. And that is where I want to just take 4 points. And I've actually written them down so I don't waste time here, right? So the asks are very specific. The first one is scholarships. Our industry, the way, if you want to do education right, just as it is in medical education and high-tech education, it costs money. And yes, it is above the average GDP of the country. So students who have talent, who have merit, but don't have means need support. So there needs to be some kind of central budgetary allocation towards scholarships. Just like there is for a lot of government institutions, there needs to be for open public as well, right? So that that's one. Second is we need to start codifying some of the historical academic information that is Indic in nature. So, somebody spoke about, I think Munjal spoke about screenwriting. And, I spoke about this earlier as well. We always talk about the 3-act structure because that has been codified by several Western, right? We never talk about the Indian screenwriting structure, which is a 5-act structure. There is no book. It's not codified. Nobody's ever spoken about codifying our culture of the Natya Shastra and making it into teachable material, which can be taught at all levels, right? Or the Rasa theory, the Navrasa theory, which is honestly forms the bedrock of all narrative content creation in India. So you have to create some kind of academic development grant to codify these, whether it's to write it into textbooks or readers or even online repositories of specific teachable information. You can't say, Acha, go refer to the Natya Shastra. I mean, it takes forever to even understand. It's so complex, right? So that's the second point. The third point is to set up chairs in key institutions where we're able to bring in global achievers in emerging technologies, and to use that time, whether it's 1 year or 6 months, 1 semester, 2 semesters, whatever, to pay them well and to get them to do teacher training across the country as well as student training, right? And this is where institutions have to make sure that they share well. So if, say, a chair is coming to Whistling Woods, I'm more than happy for him or her to travel across the country and donate and, kind of have as much time given to other institutions for train the trainer as it is to Whistling Woods. So these are 3 specific budget allocation asks: scholarships, academic development grants, and to set up chairs in key educational institutions to bring in global, successful, talented professionals.
Chaitanya, your deep engagement with the student community and academics shows with 3 very sharp, razor-sharp points. Thank you very much for making them. We will not lose sight of the 9-grid box and come back to you to see how to populate.
A PDF with all this is on its way to you.
Thank you very much. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks.
I'd like to switch tracks and now go to gaming. Games in India has become the absolute runaway. It's normally things were moving at a good pace between animation, visual effects, and games, but something happened in the horsepower, and I think we're going to have 2 wonderful gentlemen speak to that. First of all, I'd like to bring on Manish Agarwal, who is really a champion in many ways, who has looked at how in the last conversations we've had, he's looked at how to segment this into different elements of the market, because they all have different flavors, they have different needs. And I think, Manish, if you can look at all of that, not get into that detail today with the interest of time, but talk about specifically how these different verticals in the game horizon that you look at, how can they look at the industry skill linkage, and what can we bring to the table for this task force to really act upon and make it grow even faster. And we have got after you Manvinder Shukul, who will obviously who has been a champion of the services sector, to talk about that after you finish. So may I start with you first, please, Manish?
Hi, everyone.
You're on mute, Manish.
Can you hear me? Brain, yeah. So, guys, gaming, we know, is all pervasive, and as Brain said, some horsepower changed in last 3 years, and it is kind of a rocket ship now, which is kind of moving up at a very, very, very fast speed. I have only a few points, and just to kind of there are so many speakers. I believe there are 3 areas which we should kind of relook at as an AVGC task force on the skilling part. One is, how do we really create the natural inclination of gaming is interactivity. When a kid is playing, they're not just playing, they're thinking of the game design, they're thinking of art, they're thinking of interactions, various elements which they are really doing. How do we harness that desire? And I've seen it in my kids, I've seen it in various colleges I've spoken, that there is a desire to not just consume, but to kind of create. And the desire to create, if you were to channelize it through our school curriculum, through our colleges curriculum, that will kind of really spur a huge amount of content creation capabilities and capacities in this country. And the beauty of gaming, or like our industry, is that the content which you create creates a matter of pride for the child, for their family, for their social group, and that gets kind of percolated and amplified, which really further helps you in creating that awareness that yes, this is amazing through our school curriculum, through our colleges curriculum. That will kind of really spur a huge amount of content creation capabilities and capacities in this country. And the beauty of gaming, or like our industry, is that the content which you create creates a matter of pride for the child, for their family, for their social group, and that gets kind of percolated and amplified, which really further.
Can I please? Manish, back to you. I think someone unmuted themselves. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the key tasks for skilling is that how do we really create class basis what could be the curriculum which can be designed for gaming, which can really kind of bring in that whole urge to create, urge to build something right from very beginning into our education ecosystem. And Ashish and I have spoken about this in part of our national education policy. How do we really kind of subsume that into the whole scheme? The challenge there is curriculum creation, because we really do not have a set industry which has been around for 50, 60 years, which can really create curriculum. Chaitanya and I have spoken about the whole curriculum piece. How do we break down that curriculum into micro capsules, which is relevant for class 3, class 4, class 5, and so on and so forth. And then the second part is, how do we really create a destination which is like showcasing all that content which is being coming across with variety of people. And I believe, given the diversity of this country, the multilinguality, the multicultural, multi-ethnicity, the kind of content which will come in will be beautiful rainbow and ensemble of the creativity which will happen in this country. And that becomes a kind of a destination where you can really go and publish your games, you can demonstrate that, your own community will come and see. So you are kind of really creating a content, and then you're creating motivation for that content discovery to happen, and then the dissemination. And I think if you are able to kind of drive this, one job, which is, I feel that what does gaming mean? What are the facets and faculties involved in gaming? What are the jobs which I can do in gaming? Like I was with Anil's AppTech, I was on Friday taking a session on their academy, and a lot of artists were asking, sir, what can I do in gaming? Is there a concept artist? What is concept art? They don't understand. But in this whole process, various facets will automatically emerge, and then you can classify them and do that. So I think as a skilling, context of skilling in this session, I would say that just permeating and penetrating into our education, the desire, the enablers for them to create and as a process, as a part of practical or application, learn those concepts. If you were to just do that single thing and then create a destination where all that content can be showcased, we will be doing an amazing job as a catalyst to skilling for gaming in this country.
Thanks very much, Manish. Very, very well made points. I think what gaming does is, and since we're talking about learning, right? Gaming is really about learning from shared experiences. And I think that's the very, very key part which differentiates games from other more linear forms of content where someone is sending you a story and somebody else is receiving it. And I think also the tools or the learnings or the insights from what you're saying will spread to all other forms of content creation, because it is becoming more multisensory, right? It's not just it's just not the image and the sound, right? It is going beyond that now, and I think those are the learnings that are coming in from games too. And we're going to hear about AR and VR and things of the future, but the learnings for those new age industries have come from years and years of games that have been played worldwide. So thanks very much for bringing out the fact that I think this is a multifaceted journey. And also, I think you've also talked about the early steps we are taking to create curriculums that can be bite-sized and can actually scale into something bigger for the whole industry. So thanks very much for making those comments, Manish. I'd like to come to Manvinder, who, like my company is involved with large games that are played all over the world by many people who don't know that they are created here in India, and has scaled this business dramatically. So Manvinder, over to you to talk about where the industry skill linkage through your experience can really be amplified.
Thank you, Viren. I think it's one of the key things which we have to understand is that gaming, like Manish rightly said, is one of the least understood of the media and entertainment. Also, obviously because it's so new. Unlike animation and other industries, they've been around for a very long time, and we have had an opportunity to understand what it is. So gaming is AVGC in itself. And when I say that, it means that gaming has a unique distinction of utilizing skills across the entire AVGC sector, which is it has animation, it has 2D, 3D art, it has design, it has VFX, it has engineering, Now, engineering is a key component of gaming. So, because we don't understand in what gaming is, due attention so far has not really been able to go in this direction. And given how things have been in the past couple of years, how gaming is really leaping ahead, it's time that we put an effort to understand what gaming is, understand what skills go into gaming, because that, to my mind, is the key. If once we understand the skills, we will be able to take the next step, which is figure out how do we get these skills exponentially, grow these skills exponentially. So, and one first and the most important thing from my perspective is that when we talk about gaming, we have to understand that we do not have the luxury of a lot of time for learning what it takes to create skills. I know it is always said that there is no shortcut to experience, but we have to figure out ways of creating that shortcut so that we are able to create skills in the next few years rather than few decades, because that's typically what happens when you go through this learning curve and then try and create skills. So which means that we have to create a certain structure. First, and the most important thing is in gaming, a lot of our panelists have said that, and I agree, that there is no structure. And there is no structure because we don't know what that structure should be or could be. So we have to put up efforts in creating a structure for, first of all, identifying different skills and what all goes into gaming. Then for each of them, we need to have the industry perspective of what that structure should be. And again, the reason I say industry perspective of that curriculum, you can call it the education structure, whatever you call it. The reason I say that it has to be industry centric or industry driven is because that is where shortcuts come in. Shortcuts of what exactly needs to go into that curriculum, because so that once the kids come out of that course, they are production ready. And like Biren, you said that it is no longer just a back-end development center. It is, so we have reached a stage where, at least on the services side, we are, as a country, are more of a partner to our clients. We are not a back-end support structure. And the only thing that stops us from becoming bigger partners and larger partners to a larger pool of developers and publishers globally is talent availability, which means that we have to make sure that the learnings that we have had in the past 5, 6, 7, 10 years, those learnings are translated into a curriculum so that that curriculum is what benefits our training initiatives. And number two, and the most, I would say, important factor which has not been given, obviously it's not been given attention simply because we don't know about it, is the fact that we have to have a dedicated system of training our trainers. That is the key. We can have an amazing curriculum, but who are going to deliver that curriculum? That is what matters. And that's where industry expertise comes in. We have to create train the trainer, and create a bridge between trainers and industry. Because at the end of it, the areas that we are talking about as a gaming thing, gaming skills, those skills are very specific. And those skills will actually benefit if the industry experience is what comes in or is important, imbibed into the trainers. Because that is what the industry needs. Industry does not have the time right now because of the level of growth to train people and then train them some more for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years in their company before they become productive. So that gap, that bridge has to be created. That to my mind is the most important thing of what do we do with the trainers? How do we skill them? How do we give them industry experience? And once that happens, then I think one of the key things which we have to do differently in education, in this space, is that make industry experience as part of the education and not after the education. Because the moment we say you will do apprenticeship, internship, and all those things after the education, again, we are losing time. We don't have time. And we are losing a certain structure, which the kids who do this, the talent that we are trying to create, they have to, they have to experience in the industry while they're learning. Simply because when they're learning, what they're doing is basically is that whatever they've learned, they need to practice that. They need to see, okay, even if they don't practice, they need to see that getting practiced. That is where the big chunk of learning happens. So I think that's my third and the last point, that the industry training has to be part of the education main frame, the structure, so that the kids, when they come out, they're ready for the industry. And that is what we need. The only thing which stops us from being the number one today is the lack of relevant talent. I wouldn't say talent, lack of relevant talent. And we have to find ways that I'm sure we can understand what the industry is, understand the skills required, and then create the right curriculum and the right industry interface for them. I think that is something which, to my mind, what we really need to focus on from my perspective, where services can give you the largest chunk of employment. That's the biggest segment of employment which you can get. Another is the next BPO in the making if you do it right. I think I finished well in time.
Thank you very much, Manvendra. Absolutely, you did. And I think that one of the realizations that we need to have as we scale this industry is to see what we are doing as a services group. And I would define that, there are many comments made about, what the services industry only does this. It only creates that. It does this for. But actually, if you looked at it, the points were made about the IT industry earlier, the services industry is already becoming the engine room for global creativity in our field, and is one way of defining the AVGC industry. Quite apart from the fact that there are other champions now who are creating content for local, and the clarion call you heard from Munjal and others for global IP to be created out of here, and Chaitanya's comments on therefore what kind of skills should we have. So, and I know that you probably, along with many other service providers who are here on the call, have done exactly what we did. We actually pay people at Technicolor in our own company. We ran 70 academies last year internally for people that joined us. They are batches of 20 people each, which means we trained 1,400 people. And to Munjal's point about having mentors, we had to have our own folks because we didn't find that many trainers. So we had 700 people who gave their time from our own company in order to make those batches graduate. And this is not new. I can see Jayesh and others nodding because this is not new to our industry. And this is the engine room that we want to create for large-scale jobs and opportunity. On the other hand, then we'll come and see how other things happen. So thanks very much for those comments. I'd like to change tracks and go to...
Sorry to interrupt. This is Chaitanya. Because we're moving out of gaming, I just had one small thing. Because esports is now pretty much a part of gaming, right? So if Manish and
let's take that in the Q&A.
In the end? Okay, no problem.
Yeah, let's take that back again. But I think, yes, esports is yet another horse that's just left the starting gates and is running towards the finish line. So let's come back to that. But thank you for that intervention. I'd like to come now to the least talked about, but probably the most exciting space and somewhere along the last 100 years or more, we've lost what we could have actually kept as a global powerhouse in comics. And I have Preeti Vyas from Amar Chitrakatha. Neither Preeti nor ACK require any introduction, but she will be telling us as to how we can bring back 100 years of forgotten history into doing something very dramatic in the comic space, which really is the fountain. Because I think anyone on this call that creates anything that's close to developing a product, IP, story, or whatever, has to do what comic book creators do. So Preeti, over to you. Your time starts now. You're on mute. Preeti, you're on mute.
Hi, Biren. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share my perspective. Also, big thanks to the Ministry of INB, to the Education and the Skilling Ministry for even creating this platform. It's just fabulous to be a part of this discussion and to know that we are, as a industry body, collaborating with the government and taking a spirit of partnership, taking this forward. Right. So the word AVGC, the last letter is the C, and that's where we come in. So my points are focused on the comics industry as such. Two elements that comics comprise, which is writing and art. And in both, we feel that talent shortage is, of course, very real, just like we discussed earlier. The comic book, like Ashish mentioned, is the foundation of a lot of the animation and all the other industries. So it is the groundwork on which everything else is built. And, just like Munjal mentioned, Anil also mentioned that it's just not seen as a career option by children, by parents. It's not encouraged. It doesn't show up. It's still about being a doctor, engineer, etc. So I think the creative arts, they need a specific focus from the education ministry, from the skilling ministry side. We need creative writing to be recognized as a major subject with graduate and postgraduate courses available pan-India. Writing for comics is especially different from writing novels or even screenplays. In fact, all these areas need specialized courses, the likes of which are offered in all major American universities. Going further, inclusion of skills for creative careers at the school level would also make a big difference. The second point I wanted to raise was that in the year of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, we need to take a focused look at the woeful shortage of courses and academic pathways available in the subjects of Indic studies. Chaitanya mentioned the Natya Shastra and the Navrasa and all of those things. But even at a deeper level than that, the subjects of Indic studies, Indian mythology, ancient Indian culture at a mass level, this is absolutely missing. How can we expect pride in our past when there is an absence of academia in these major important areas? The only option for us as a company ends up being to hire students with literature or history majors who might have studied Shakespeare and Austen rather than our own texts, right? So inclusion of Indic writing and texts of will give that exposure, right? So there's always a analogy which I love to share that all education needs to have two elements when children are being educated. The content that they consume needs to be a window and needs to be a mirror. So a window is a window to the outside world where you're looking at what's happening and looking at past, present, future of the outside world, and that's important to have that perspective. But what's more important is to have a mirror to your own reality, to where you are coming from, right? That's what Amachita Katha stands for. For over 55 years, we've been telling Indian stories. So that India pride will only come when we start teaching in these topics at a very young level. There's a similar problem with artists and designers for the comic space. We have to hire people with a fine art, commercial art or graphic design background, and we spend significant resources in training them in-house to get them comic book ready. There is a real need for specialized art training combined with learning about Indian art forms, the kind of which the work that Munjal also has done in that space. Like Gond, Varli, Madhubani. When we start seeing these in popular comics, that's when we will see the new generation of children developing love and respect for our Indian art. Right. So it's not going to come by taking kids, once in a year to a museum. It's going to come when they start seeing it every day in the animation, in the comics that they read. At Amachita Katha, we are seeing a great renaissance of creation. So today, while in the 80s and 90s, we were creating 400 pages a year, this year in 2021, we created 1,000 pages of content. The digital medium has allowed us to really grow at an exponential pace. We have 2 million users from across the world on the Amachita Katha app reading our comics, right? But we need that background, that talent in writing and art, people who are passionate about the India story to create that. Similarly, also courses in the business of comic books, in the business of publishing, in the business of licensing. All these courses need to be included either at the Indian Institute of Management or at all the major management schools. There could be specializations or even majors offered, but at least a unit needs to be offered. Most of us who are in the licensing game have learned on the job. Nobody ever taught us about what are the rules of licensing content. Finally, industry and Government of India collaboration to create opportunities for internships, scholarships, awards. I'll speak from our perspective. We would be delighted to create an Anant Pai Memorial Award to celebrate our founders' contribution to the comic book industry for excellence in comic book writing, and also offer internships, summer placements, and scholarships to deserving candidates from the smallest towns of India. I believe India has the most talented artists in the world. We need to support them, highlight them, give them the platform. Likewise, awards for teachers as well. Because in the spirit of the Guru Shishya Parampara, unless the Guru is acknowledged, the Shishya is not going to be able to perform, right? So, yes, these were the few points from my side. Thank you for the opportunity.
Very well made, Preeti, very well made points. I think, looking at this industry as the ground zero of what we do across storytelling. And I think you brought out a couple of points that are not only applicable to this industry, and I will request maybe Jaikumar to touch upon them later on when you talked about the understanding of the monetization of content when he comes up, because he's had to learn, if I might use that expression, and be a champion of how to create the business models around co-production, around licensing, around distribution, around things that you said we require courses for as well.
We can learn from the best in the world. We can learn from our own case studies. There is enough material available now for us to learn rather than, to play it by the ear.
Thank you very much for this point, and thank you for also talking about rewards and recognitions, because I think artistic folks require to be acknowledged.
Absolutely.
Sometimes the credit on a screen is a very big acknowledgement for them, but there are other ways of acknowledging them as well. So Thank you. I'm going to come now to visual effects, and we have Jesh Krishnamurthy who's the founder and the CEO of AnyBrain. He's been through many journeys, both internationally and locally, and has put up AnyBrain is one of the fine establishments that both looks at growing the artist and also deploying the artist on world-class content everywhere. Has had wonderful partnerships with many world majors. Does many things for people that are looking to come into India, like Netflix and others. Is a big champion of the artist, being an artist himself, and someone that I always look to for insights in our industry in the visual effects space. So over to you, Jesh.
Thank you, Viren. I wasn't expecting to speak, but I will share a few pointers for sure. I think that for me, it's first of all very heartening that we're all here today. And it's a fantastic achievement and really big kudos to everyone who's really pushed for this, because we know how hard it's been to get here. So big thank you to people like you, Ashish, Munjal, others who are contributing, because it's because of these efforts that we've reached here. And I think I have a few points that I always harp on about. So I think it's very important we change the perception of artists. I think today, when we look at our schooling system, an artist is the last profession you want your kid to go into. So I think that if somewhere we can say, hey, gaming is cool, art is cool, creativity is cool, and really kind of empower the kids, because we're talking about 10, 12-year-old kids who in 10 years are going to be some of the top performing artists that as they grow up. So I think it's very important that we educate parents that, guys, this is actually a fabulous opportunity across the board. The other thing that I have seen in my last 16, 17 years in India and another 15 years spent in Hollywood, we have some of the most incredible talent that is available. So I think it's really important that we nurture and groom and empower our talent from a very young age, and specifically from small towns. I've recently been doing an exercise with people who are literally out of villages and working on enabling them to create. And I am so amazed at the kind of creativity that exists. The creative depth in this country is humongous. So if you're dreaming of being a powerhouse globally, which we are getting to, I think that realizing that even our small town kids, they're hungry for this opportunity, and they have skill sets that a city kid can't actually acquire easily. The confidence that these young kids that I work with from smaller towns, it's incredible. They're not scared to jump in. So I think nurturing our talent out of our villages is really important. The other thing that I also kind of I'm a 12th pass. I never went to college. I never did anything. So I think there's a huge realization here that the kind of education needed to create leaders in this industry is not necessarily only a formal education. I think this Guru Shishya Parampara, which is really, really important. And I think that I would love to have 10 kids working with me all year round, and I would love to groom them. I think we need to be able to do that. The other area, last point I want to make, is how important mathematics is. I'm really happy to see people from IIT here. It really warmed my heart when I saw that there are folks from IIT here, and I think that one of the things that was really great about my experience was spending a lot of time in Canada, And in Canada, there's so much emphasis given to the mathematics side of this industry, and I think that we really have to look at that whole physics and mathematics and simulation side, the R&D side. If we're going to become a powerhouse, then we need to be developing these softwares internally also in this country. And I think there's nobody better than IITs to be helping us do that, because that's where the kind of brain power that we need, along with an artist's heart. The brain and the heart can truly combine to create something outstanding and spectacular out of this country. We know our programming chops are great. So I think there's so much that we can speak about, but essentially I think realizing that art is a beautiful line of work, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. And if it can be given the confidence that, hey, you know what, you're gaming, but that's really going to help you achieve a purpose further down in your life, and empowering our children and saying, hey guys, these new technologies and these new ideas and these new platforms are just, they're screaming for Indians. The kind of talent that's there in this country is phenomenal, as all of you have said. So I think more than anything else, it's a huge testament to the industry, and I think that there's a lot to be done and a lot to be achieved, and a lot to be proud of also for all of us here. So thank you so much for the opportunity, and Ashish, great work.
Thanks, Jesh. I've recently, as you know, I spend my weekends writing quirky posts on LinkedIn. And I said that with no disrespect to the profession, because we are all in that profession, filmmaking has now become quantum image making. And just as he talked about mathematics, and just as physics reached a dead end, the classical physics, and gave way to quantum physics, I think what's happening today is that we are redefining filmmaking as quantum image making, because the applications of it are so vast. And yes, some have a very scientific bent and others have a very creative bent. And we do need to make art cool in order for that artistic awareness to come. And it does happen from homes, from schools, from neighborhoods, and generally to make something happen as a mainstream. So I think in one way we're talking about, the struggle that we've come through is actually giving way to the promise that we're talking about today on this webinar. I think that's really the conversation that we're going through. So in the interest of time, moving on, I also wanted to just add, because there's no other champion of the visual effects. So I will speak about the fact that, we have a small, cozy team of 2,500 visual effects creators out of the team that I have in Bangalore and in Mumbai. And there are things that people could not understand happen here in India. I will take technical things like, hair and groom. I will take DMP. I will take effects. I will take things like that. We didn't have more than 50 or 100 of these professionals in the whole country. And today we have departments of 2 and 3 and 400 of such professionals working in a single company. And I think that is also it's a defining part of what we're doing, because when you want to become end-to-end and not just a back-end producer, then you need to be able to have all of these skills that can create, the kind of work that many of us are doing here. And certainly very proud of the team at MPC and the Mill to be able to make that happen in collaboration. And we work with, at any point of time, we work with 15 or 19 other Indian companies, including Jesh with yourself, illustriously for many, many years. And I think that is also an ecosystem story, which growth has to happen in an ecosystem, right? When people rise together with other partners, it kind of, all the boats rise when the water rises. I think that's the kind of thing that we are also talking about, the industry skill linkage on this call. So coming into animation, which is, the A of the AVGC and perhaps the oldest of the four, but not very old compared to the rest of the world, because the real movement started off, although there were gurus for many, many years before. But I think it's only 20, 25 years before India became kind of really active in this space. And many of them on the call are here with us. So I'd like to come to Mr. Jayakumar first, who has really, explored this business of animation. And I specifically say the business of animation by understanding that bridges need to be built across geography, bridges need to be built across skill sets, bridges need to be built across skills, different models. If you're doing episodic, and right from the esoteric festival called the Animation Week of the Masters that he so ably champions every year, coming up very shortly, to the large formats of distribution and acquiring distribution companies in Europe, etc. Can you, Jay, just tell us how you think the industry skill linkage is so critical if we want to amplify the India leg of your global company to become much bigger than it already is? You're on mute.
Thank you, Ashish ji, and thank you, Biren, for the wonderful efforts to bring this platform. Thank you, government. This is fantastic. We have been waiting for this moment for the last 25 years. I think, when we started, Biren, 22, 23 years back, I think we were facing exactly the same issue, the same supply-demand gap in the industry. And in now 23 years, we are in the same place. So I think it is probably a good, kind of thing to reflect, what need to be done. I think a distinct disadvantage with our approach towards skilling has been, I think, to ignore the demands of the market. For the most part, skills have been provided in a top-down fashion. Thus, most skilling efforts focus almost solely on providing certain skills, but fail to match them with the needs of the market. For any skilling schemes to yield long-lasting results, even today, matching is not enough. Given the way the market demands fluctuate, for instance, look at how COVID pandemic has changed completely our industries. Skilling efforts must try to anticipate the needs of the market. Skilling efforts should also help us foresee emerging trends and help us embrace those trends with agility. I mean, even in the last 1 year, the kind of changes that is happening in our industry in terms of NFT, metaverse, new, kind of technologies, new things. I think, I don't think our, kind of training and is matching with the speed of the, kind of the changes in the marketplace. So I think that is probably one major thing we need to, address when we are really looking at skilling and for the future. Coming back to the, from the education point of view, we also have an small academy in Trivandrum. One major problem is awareness, which I don't want to explain because Chaitanya and Mr. Anil has already addressed that. I think one suggestion I have is that, we can actually suggest a creative career orientation session for school students in every school for creatively inclined students. I think, that probably a very good way to educate them at the very early stage about this, career opportunities in this particular sector. The second one, and this is something from my experience, when we have really started, even now, I think a major part of the students are creatively inclined, people are coming to this industry from economically downtrodden communities, artisan community, the carpentry making community, the jewelry making community. So those kind of communities, because they're traditionally artists, they are the one who are, kind of, our front runners for this, thing. And our courses are, quite expensive. And both Chaitanya as well as Preeti talked about scholarship. But I think another important thing which the government probably should do is, making education loans available to animation courses. This was a major problem. At a local level, for many institutes, local banks, are all kind of doing it. But many of the nationalized banks, don't consider animation courses as a course to provide them the fees. the educational loans. I think the educational loans, if there is a kind of a large level central intervention, I think this could be a significant benefit for students to access this. The third one is about recognition, and today kids are also wanted the the degree or diploma, kind of whatever. So I think there also, if we can use, MESC is doing a great job there, but if we can actually use MESC certification or any other kind of certification which basically give them that kind of recognition, I think that would be a kind of a good incentive. Another thing is national and state level and even local events like you mentioned, the Animation Master Summit. I know for kind of Kerala and the people and the artists here, how it kind of benefited. So if there is a way that we will be able to actually create festivals and events where they will be able to interact with the stalwarts from the respective kind of industries, that is an important thing. Another thing is about apprenticeship. In many other kind of sectors, apprenticeship is mandatory for many companies. We have a NAP system, National Apprenticeship stuff, and even actually we are kind of doing it. But I don't know how much our industry is aware about this. The government is providing up to 25% kind of stipend back with subject to a cap. But I don't know how many studios in India are using this opportunity. So this will be a huge benefit for students after their training, come to the industry, work with industry pipeline and all. Another topic I wanted to touch base is on the creating high value jobs in AVGC. So most of the training program are today, like many of the speakers talk about, these promotion related jobs. So we need to be, the focus also need to be more on creating high value jobs in pre-production, like writing, ideation, storyboarding, design. The focus on IP creation also need to be increased because that is, like Munjal said, this is definitely going to bring, the country, the revenues as well as recognition. So this one, for this particular one, apart from creating centers of excellence at the national level, I think establishment of localized development labs to tap local talents from the small towns and villages of India also need to be done. My last point is about research opportunities in the AVGC sector with the top research institutes in the country. In many foreign countries, there is a very strong collaboration with a very high-end research institute with industry, where industry and research institute sponsor kind of common topics and development, and once a solution is provided, that particular company and the industry will generally benefit. So these are my thoughts. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, JK, for those very, very well-made thoughts. We are going to move to a creator. We are going to have Charuvi Agarwal from Charuvi Design Labs to please come in and give her perspective on how we can create the skills linkage with between education and industry. Charuvi, I think so. Yes.
Thank you, Virenji, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Information and Broadcast, for this opportunity. There's clearly an overlap in the thought process in regards to skills and career development. So, but as a content creator over here, the industry can really help in creating a framework for academic curriculum, which we have mentioned before as well. Broadly, the same can be divided between creative and technical capabilities. Now, from the technical point of view, industrial tech development and advancements need to be updated on a regular basis in the course module. Having said that, creative skills, however, are by far more complex since there's a component of talent. So training in fine art colleges or art-based fields should be a prerequisite. For this, long courses between 2 to 4 years would be needed in art institutions specifically. Again, the industry can help designing the digital curriculum and assist the institution based on this. This will also actually aid the traditional painters to transition into the digital field. Secondly, which is my favorite actually, is something on the lines of Pixar in a Box, which is co-designed by Khan Academy and Pixar, where we introduced a free curriculum in every single school from an early age. Now, these digital classes would be designed by studios that primarily introduce simple concepts of making animated film. Now, this can serve as an inspiration in early years and introduce filmmaking competitions at that age. So appreciation and such challenges can be a great driver at that point of time. And lastly, not the least, participate and conduct industry nights with select institutes for placements. That's about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Charuvi. I think we've really had a fantastic cross-section to just define, what AVGC really is. I think while we were talking about creating a task force, but today really has set out the agenda for what the tasks itself can be, right? Because that itself is very, very key. There's no point having a task force if we don't really sharpen the vision and the approach to what should happen, and the challenge that we have been given by the Prime Minister that we must have optimal outcomes. So I'd like to move through some comments from my side, and then a couple of questions which I'll take and pass around to some of the panelists here. So I'd like to just first of all say that there have been a lot of different approaches to what AVGC should be doing. You heard from Mr. Chandra his vision of what the National Center of Excellence is likely to be, and we see his encouragement, and we see his missionary approach to wanting to make this happen very soon, and we welcome that. And of course, that can be a fountain for helping the industry skill linkage, as it always has been envisaged, for many years now. We've also, I think, seen many forums that have come together. I think, we've seen our reports coming in from many consultants at various forums, FICU frames for many years, the CII Summit Effects more recently, GAFIX, which has become a seminal event in the South Asia and Asian context, bringing several speakers and several participants from all over the world, B2B forums that have been happening, the efforts of the Game Developer Conference in the NASCOM world. I think these are all I think coming together for where we are today. I'd like to also just talk about the fact that, and I think it was touched upon by the last few speakers, we are seeing the emergence of many new skills. We are seeing the emergence of virtual production, of real-time technologies. We are seeing that we are moving into, if I might just say that AR and VR and XR and so on, some of them are maturing business models. Some of them are emerging business models. And we are definitely going to see a lot of confluence of game engine technology coming into conventional television and filmmaking. It's already happening in a very large way. And while software has never defined how art is created, it is definitely a very major tool. And I think that's something that we're going to see happen. We are seeing that when we created the smaller version of what the COE is, we have a COE in Bangalore, into which the Karnataka state government has already contributed through its association ABI in excess of 32 crores as on date out of the total 48.5 crore project that it is. And we've seen that when we put up a 200 camera setup for photogrammetry, the whole area of scanning, the whole area of how to create the digital next, the digital humans, the digital creatures, is something that the industry is running towards. And I think that's something that can scale on a national level as well. And obviously will also inform both the future of jobs and the future of curriculum. Similarly, there are things that are not used that much, but the gaming industry as it scales will be seeing a lot of motion capture. I think most of, a lot of work that comes into people like Manrinder and ourselves from the big players all over the world is data that gets motion captured somewhere else and comes in here. Now, while that itself, setting up a large mocap facility is not necessarily a commercially very exciting project, but these are where the government intervention can really help, where the heavy lifting of infrastructure is created in central resources that can be used by small, medium, and large enterprises. And I think we've also we will include in our further conversations members from the technology community, because it was mentioned earlier that when we want to prepare people for the jobs of the future, it depends on how do we make them ready with the computer graphics pipelines that they will have to confront, and so on and so forth. We in Karnataka, as most people on the call know, we are in 27 government art colleges that didn't have a digital tool. The project has been on for the last 10 years. It is voluntary. And yes, the conversations about how to make this more official, how to certify them, etc., will be important conversations going forward. But I think those are the kinds of models that we now need to scale on a more national basis. And in the incubation center that was set up here which has a 52-seater, we have actually seen 3 or 4 companies and 2 currently already there that are actually working on research. And we have now from Manipal Shishti, the first batch that are staying back after their graduation to come into the incubation center in order to work on their masters by taking those courses. The 2 other comments, and I know I have hands up from Chaitanya as well as Ashish, and I'll definitely come to both of you. But I also did want to mention that I think in the establishment of financial models, we should not ignore the fact that there is a lot of will from companies that are in media and entertainment to potentially pool their CSR resources. It was a question on the group that someone very wisely raised. And I can tell you that companies like us have, we have both the desire to, and have also actually gone and worked with several, students and young people at the bottom, well, so-called the kind of lower socioeconomic groups, in order to bring them into the world of arts. Because when our volunteers who are senior artists from our studio go to these camps across, with Child Fund and many other institutions, they've actually got the people in those villages and those panchayats and those students and the school teachers to understand, oh my gosh, these guys are highly paid professionals in the arts world. And I think that's kind of where Anil was headed in his conversation about how do we make this more ubiquitous? How do we make it more mainstream? And I think the CSR story there should not be ignored, because that is going to be a huge opportunity going forward. Last couple of points, I think, which also came up on the chat, and I didn't want to leave them out, but we will capture all of the comments made out there, is just how to look at the hybrid model. So someone mentioned that COVID, and I think people on the call mentioned that COVID is an event that has been a game changer. And therefore, the ability to create things in a hub and spoke model, which didn't exist before. And I think Ashish brought about the fact of how many small towns have kind of become more included in the rollout of, but there are many, many more cities to go. And I think these are very important. And I'd also like to bring about the fact that the Ministry of Electronics and IT, through the STPI program, have created centers of excellence for games, for AR, VR, and for animation, and they're early stage now. And there's a call for mentors, so those of you on this call who want to participate in that will also be able to bring those learnings to the National Center of Excellence and through the MESC and other forums into the story. So I do want to come to Ashish and then Chaitanya first, because he raised his hand first, and Ashish and Munjal. But if you can make that 2 minutes each, and then we can ask any other
Ashish raised
questions.
his hand first.
All right, then Ashish first.
He's super senior to me, so I can't talk before him.
We are not going by weight, volume, or age, right?
Yeah, we can compare in the weight. I think 2-3 quick points that need to be added to this report. One is, that gaming and our aspect is revolving a lot from the consumer experience learning. And that's why the research needs to include the consumers and their emotional quotient. And the emotional intelligence for AVGC XR is very, very critical, because you are engaging them in a very active way and not in a passive way only. In fact, even in the passive way, storytelling is all about emotional intelligence. Every storyteller binds you with emotions. So that's one aspect that we need to include into the education. Second is that we very clearly see as the industry that the adoption of the relationship that we have with the state governments, because the implementation is into the states, and to interact and have an inclusive program with states is extremely critical. And to have their buy-in into skilling as well as creating clusters and giving way to the industry. That has happened. We have created case studies with several states, and it has worked very well. So that case study as an industry, we would like to take to every single state in India. Third is that there are very interesting small states like Tripura and, right now Orissa and Jammu and Kashmir and all, who would like to venture into this space. And as an industry, we should actually look at an agenda to help the government to reach out to these states who are interested right away, and then adopt them so that we all can travel and encourage people in that state. And all the people who work into our studios from those states, we need to help them travel back to their states and be a case and a role model, so that more people and more parents can make a decision in making this career. And I think these are few points we need to really do as an agenda for taking the education forward and creating that interest forward. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Ashish. Thank you very much. Chaitanya?
Yeah, so a couple of things that I wanted to add. So one is, there is one big aspect of, well, I don't know if it's science or no, but as of now it sits in the science vertical, which we've not yet included into our education, is cognitive science. See, at the end of it, we don't make anything, we don't build anything. Our product is emotions. We are essentially selling emotions to people and asking them for money, right? Not study the mind. So whether it entire senses spectrum, or the fact that now spatial immersion, temporal immersion, cognitive immersion. So Ashish spoke about emotional intelligence. This is all it all emerges from CogSci. So cognitive science, like IIT Gandhinagar has a fantastic CogSci program. We had them over for a week to kind of help our students and faculty, and we realized the sea change in the way that we've built curriculums and started teaching, because now you're actually teaching to you're thinking mind more than ticking boxes in a bullet points, right? So that's one. Second is, we have to look at the when you say media and entertainment education, it gets lumped all together, right? So you have to try and codify it in some broad verticals. So generally what we look at is, you have narrative arts, you have media, and you have communication arts, you have creative arts and performing arts. So narrative arts is all your filmmaking skills, cinematography, direction, editing, producing, screenwriting, sound, visual effects, production design. Communication arts is advertising, journalism, events, PR, sports management, etc., etc. Creative arts would be animation, gaming, fashion, design. Performing arts would be acting, music, singing, dance, right? So if once we have these, then you have kind of broad, large buckets which students can get into. They can start their education shallow and wide, and then start to go down narrow and deep as they move into their programs. So these were the two additional aspects that I wanted to bring in. One is a good deep study of, at least strong study of cognitive science, and to try and break the media and entertainment education down into these broad buckets. I don't want people super specializing in their first year, but just to understand which of these four areas they're broadly keen on.
Thank you. Munjal?
Yeah. Biryan, I just want to make another very crucial point, and I think this is a call for all the industry captains today who've all graciously come here. What I'm proposing is a national database of talent, so which is effectively that today, if you look at skills, right, we've probably gone to the smaller cities and looked at the talent that is there. Like I was invited to open an animation school in Sikkim, and I was amazed by the talent that was there. So I think if we can eventually look at a database of skill and where it exists, and then obviously on the other side, map demand, which is that as studios, we know what are our projects in pipeline, right? So which is down the line, if my studio is working on a series and I know it's greenlit, I know I'm going to require 50 people and 100 people down the line, and I know that if there is a talent cluster available, whether it's in Jaipur, Jodhpur, or whatever parts of India, right? I can tap into that, and I think it will also become a fantastic data tool for the Ministry of Skill, Ministry of Education as well, to see where they need to put in their resources, what areas of our country is really where the talent is emerging. And I think with some great data modeling, we can really do some very, very focused work, and ensure that we get very good results. We've already started work on this at a certain level at the Media and Entertainment Skill Council, where I serve on the governing board, but I think it needs to be amplified, So again, I think this is just for all of us to consider that perhaps something like this, might serve the industry well, over a 4 or 5 year horizon. And I'm very happy to, engage with others on thoughts and ideas on how we can actually make this practical. Thanks, Viren.
Okay. I think just wanted to come to a few of the few concluding remarks. Just for everyone to know, there is a feedback on this session that will take place this afternoon. All the chairs of the 7 breakaway panels will be coming back to give their kind of feedback to the central body organizing this from the ministry. There will be a report that will be produced in a couple of days in order to bring all of these thoughts down into some more crystallized form. But I'd just like to make some, concluding remarks that I think a lot was said and understood in this period, right? And I just want to acknowledge them in no particular order. But I think, we talked of, games, the fastest sector. We talked of interactivity and how that will become a learning in itself in how we create content. Because when you write for animation, when you write for a comic book, you write for animation features, you write for animation episodic, you write for animation advertising, they're completely different forms of writing. And I think we've talked about that. And we also talked about the fact that this creates pride and that, we need to develop those capsules. It was quite clearly said that that's a work in progress. And I think we can all work towards making that happen because we're starting from scratch. We also talked about how engineering is a key component of this, and I think that was brought out in Manvinder's, and I think from there we talked about how do you accelerate the skill creation when we don't have a structure. And I think Ashish and Munjal and others have spoken to the fact that is what we set out to do in forums like the MESC. To bring some kind of a framework that goes out into that area. Preeti talked about writing. She talked about echoed the views on index studies. Talked about the allied revenue streams that are required for publishing and licensing, and how I think was brilliantly said how content is both a window and a mirror. To Preeti, I can only say that all of us know much more about mirrors than in the age of the Zoom call and the Microsoft Teams call, because we never saw our faces so much as in the recent past. But that's on a lighter note. And I think she also did bring about things like the awards, the Anand Pai Award, for example, that we could do that. In the name of Mr. Ram Mohan in animation and other leaders that have kind of set the ball for us. I also want to make a related point there, and the government and the Ministry of Information Broadcasting is already working on that. But when we want to create the bridge, right? For example, why can't we have the equivalent of the world's largest festival? And so by participating in Annecy in animation, for example, which is the world's largest festival, there was a proposal from the ambassador of France in India to create Bangalore as a twin city for the Annecy festival, which is still in the works. Because if those things happen, then you have the world coming here And instead of our paying for people to just come, as Chaitanya was saying, and spend 6 months or a year, they will be automatically excited about coming to a place which itself is then becoming one of the hubs for such a creative competition and so on. The other thing that was not mentioned is, and I think we need to do more of that, is to actually have competitions, because people really have a very competitive spirit. And if we can create ways by which we have much larger rewards, we do this at GAFX, for example, every year, where I think we have almost about 20 lakhs worth of prizes given to the best modeler, the best, sculptor, the best whatever. But I think the more you create to make art cool, as someone was saying, the way to make it cool is really to make people participate in it more and take that back to their parents and so on. From those 27 art colleges, every year when we do GAFX, we bring people by bus and put them in OYO rooms. We bring people who can't afford to come to an event, and they see people from DreamWorks and so on presenting there. That is aspirational, because then those guys will have a hunger that urban kids somehow don't have anymore. And I think that's a very key part of what we want to do. Anil, of course, articulated the point about the fact that for scale, you really need to make this a career. It should go up from he found a arbitrary number 30. It should go into the top 5 or top 10 skills. And I think also Chaitanya then talked about the 9 box and talked about art and craft and technology and bringing employment and research and education into the mix. And I think that was very well made, and obviously comes from many, many batches that they've graduated at their end. Munjal talked of, beyond STEM, what do we do as we move from I wanted to make the quip that it all stems from the fact, but he wanted to go beyond the STEM. And I think that's what we were talking about in this particular call. He also made a lovely analogy to, can we be the Olympiad for kids, right? Can this sector somehow become that way for them to kind of embrace it? And from there, how do we put the continuing education program to take it up the ladder? And of course, the knowledge bank, in which I think he was addressing everyone on this call, saying, "Hey, are you guys contributing 20 hours or 40 hours a year? Please write to Munjal after this and say, I hereby volunteer with my contribution to that bank." So that was a really powerful idea. I also think that we then saw, lots of, and I think the report will bring out all of this, but I think those are some of the key points I noted down. I was trying to keep time and keep in touch with the chat and keep in touch with all of you. But it was a very, very fruitful interaction. I do think that while we had high expectations from it, we also have we have seen that the speakers, the 10 or 11 speakers, have eloquently delivered on that particular challenge. I think there's enough fodder for our team that is helping us to make this report to take that forward. If there is nothing else, and I would want to say a very big thank you to the Ministry of Education. I know Mr. Sanjay Murthy and Mr. Raja Raman have engaged with all of us. Mr. Atul Tiwari spoke to us, and he's from that side of the fence. But this session put together, by the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, Mr. Apurva Chandra's opening comments, very, very heartening, setting the pace for us to keep up with government and make sure that the plans for 2022 are achieved. Nirja ji, thank you very much for your leadership and your guidance on this call, together with Danpreet and your entire team. I think it's been very well prepared and very well curated. So thank you very much for that leadership. And thank you also to people that are helping with the report, and Samir and Pooja and everyone who've been my WhatsApp friends for the last 48 hours or the last 56 hours. We've kind of been having a lot of fun trying to put this together. So I'd like to say that, we've finished ahead of time. That's really good. We're giving back a few minutes to everyone on this call. I do thank everyone for their participation and look forward to a continued engagement. Don't let this be the end of a conversation. Let's treat this as the beginning of a conversation. We want to thank all the trade bodies that work with us, CII and FICCI and ABI and many others, right, from Tasi, so on and so forth. They all do a great job with events for the community through the entire year, and we want to keep all of them engaged in a way that that makes this moment now a reality for the sector. So thanks everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you, Biren. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, Biren. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.